After studying this module, you shall be able to 1. Know about the difference in the resources of the center and the states, such that state government have been entrusted with more and larger responsibilities vis-a-vis states, while central government has been assigned more revenue than the states, and therefore there is a need to transfer resources from the center to the states. Different states have differential needs and capacities, and therefore there is a need to treat different states differently while transferring resources to the states. Secondly, identify the imbalance between the financial resources of the center and the states as a basic cause of vertical imbalance between the center and the states. The existence of institution of finance commission to correct this imbalance, horizontal imbalance among different states in terms of difference in area, population, level of economic and infrastructure development, etc. Thirdly, analyze the sources of conflict between the center and states. Formula and criterion adopted by the 12th and the 13th Finance Commission with regard to transfer of resources from center to states, and also division of resources transferred from the center among different states. Let us start with an introduction about the federal structure of India. India has a federal structure in which a clear distinction is made between the functions and sources of revenue of the union and states. However, the residual parts belong to the center. The principle adopted for this classification is that taxes which have an interstate base are levied by the union, while those with a local base are levied by the state. The residuary parts belong to the union. In India, there has always existed vertical imbalance because the central government has been assigned more revenues while the state governments have been entrusted with more and larger responsibilities. Correcting vertical imbalance therefore necessitates transfers from the central government to the state governments taken together. There are 29 states and 7 union territories in India, which differ significantly in area, size of population, income, tax base, forest and mineral wealth, etc. At the same time, there are different capacities and needs of the states. Differential needs and capacities of different states, what we may call horizontal imbalances, need to be corrected while transferring resources from the center to the states. To discuss vertical imbalance, let us start with the responsibility and resources of the center and the states. According to the Constitution, the center has to concern itself with the most generalized features of the Indian economy, such as the defense from foreign aggression, creation and maintenance of banking system, railways and ports, as well as facilities for national economic planning with the regulation and development of large scale industries, exploitation of mineral resources, regulation of foreign trade, etc. On the other hand, the states are concerned with important aspects of the life of the people, such as the maintenance of law and order, the construction and maintenance of irrigation, power, road transport, etc. The development of educational and health facilities, the promotion of primary sector such as agriculture, fisheries, forest, and secondary sector, for example, tiny, small and medium industries. Financial resources of the center and the states. The Constitution provided for different types of financial resources to carry out these responsibilities. The Union is entrusted with the power to tax personal incomes and profits of companies, excise duties and custom duties. In a rapidly developing economy, these are the most productive taxes in the country. In the case of the states, land constitutes an important base of taxation. Apart from the fact that in a densely populated country like India, the volume of land coming under tax remains almost stationary. There is hardly any scope of growth in this source of revenue. Various taxes on commodities and services like sales tax, state excise duties, duties in electricity rates, motor vehicle tax, etc. can be quite productive. Since taxation of industrial and commercial properties has been the preserve of the center, and as a result of economic development, there has been tremendous expansion in the base of industrial and commercial property, income and wealth. Financial resources of the centers have grown tremendously. At the same time, while rapid industrial development boosted central excise duty collection, expansion of imports pushed up custom duty collection. This seems to have given buoyancy to the central revenue, which was not available to any tax head assigned to the states except sales tax. However, recently there has been a significant increase in one source of state revenue, namely registration fee from transfer of immovable property. There has been an enormous expansion of financial powers of the central government after 1951, whose dimensions have progressively increased in relation to the combined resources of all state governments put together. For instance, the current tax revenue of the center have risen from rupees 360 crore in 1950-51 to rupees 65,000 crores in 94-95 and to rupees 11 lakhs 58,906 crores in 2013 and 14 budget. On the other hand, current revenues of the states, excluding transfers from the center, have risen from rupees 200 crores in 1950-51 to rupees 53,400 crores in 1994-95 and rupees 7,63,851 crores in 2013-14 budget. The rate of growth of revenue of the center is much faster as compared to that of the states. But then the center has only limited functions to perform, while the functions of the states are almost unlimited. Now we will discuss how the vertical imbalance can be corrected. Indian Constitution itself is responsible for the existence of a financially strong center and weak states. Before partition, there was a growing consensus in favor of the corporation tax and export duties to be included in the divisible pool. This was the case made out before the Sarkar Committee known as the Expert Committee on Financial Provisions. It was partition which alerted the Constituent Assembly against possible dangers to the unity of India arising from the divisive forces. Its effect is reflected in the strong center theme which runs through the Constitution. The financial provisions of the Constitution clearly reflect this strong center bias. Though the states have been assigned certain taxes which are levied and collected by them, they are also supposed to share in the revenue of certain union taxes, and according to Constitution, there are certain other taxes which are levied and collected by the union, but the proceeds of which wholly go to the states. In addition, the states receive grant in aid of the revenue from the union, which further increase the amount of transfers between the two levels of governments. The transfer of resources from the central government to the states is an essential feature of the present financial system of India. Under the provision of Article 280 of the Constitution, the President is required to appoint a finance commission for the specific purpose of devolution of non-planned revenue resources. The functions of the commission are to make recommendations to the President in respect of 1. The distribution of net proceeds of taxes to be shared between the union and the states, and the allocation of share of such proceeds among the states. 2. The principles which should govern the payment by the union of grants in aid to the revenues of the state. And third, any other matter concerning financial relations between the union and the states. The appointment of the Finance Commission is of great importance, for it enables the financial relations between the center and the units to be altered in accordance with changes in need and circumstances. The elasticity in relationship introduced by this provision has great advantage. Now we will move on to the sources of conflict listed by the states. West Bengal, Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Maharashtra and southern states have generally been very agitated over the question of states' autonomy. The center-state conflict on financial relations is only a part of the overall center-state relations and the demand for political and fiscal autonomy. The sources of conflict as listed by the state at different times are as follows. 1. The basic assumption of the Constitution in favor of a strong center and weak dependent states is no longer acceptable, and states like West Bengal insist that a strong center requires equally strong and autonomous states. 2. The nature of functions to be performed by the states and the necessity to promote cultural, linguistic and the special conditions of each state require that states should be autonomous. Third, since independence, the center has been gradually extending its function in such a way as to keep the states completely dependent on it. This process has been encouraged in the first 2 decades after independence by the Congress party, which was in power both at the center and at the state. The process was further strengthened during the period of emergency between 1975 and 1977. Fourth, the center has been duplicating unnecessarily a number of departments which have no real functions to perform, that is education, public health, etc., which are all state subjects. There is even a move that these subjects should be put on the concurrent list. Fifth, the center has been interfering in the affairs of the state even in the field of law and order, which is purely a state subject, by setting up the Central Reserve Police, the Border Security Force and the Industrial Security Force, etc. Sixth, the center with too little to do is entrusted with too much financial resources, while the state governments with so many vital functions to perform are starved of financial resources. 7. The financial resources of the center are highly elastic, while those of the states are relatively inelastic. Accordingly, the states have been forced to depend upon the center to a large extent for their financial requirements. 13th Finance Commission recommended that the share of the states in net proceeds of the central taxes shall be 32% every year for the period of the award. It has also recommended for greater grants in aid to the states. In all, states will get 136% higher amount in comparison with 12th Finance Commission. This has been due to increase in the expected revenue of the center, and secondly due to increase in the share of states as recommended by the 13th Finance Commission. In comparison to the indicative ceiling of 38% by 12th Finance Commission, 13th Finance Commission recommended for indicative ceiling at 39.5% of gross revenue receipts of the center as overall transfers to the states on revenue account. We note that 12th, 11th and 10th Finance Commission recommended a share of the states in the net proceeds of the central taxes to be 29, 29.5 and 30.5% respectively. Therefore, one may conclude that with regard to vertical devolution, 13th Finance Commission has done better by granting more revenue transfers to the states. After understanding vertical imbalances, now we will move on to discuss horizontal imbalance. The horizontal aspect of transfers relates to the sharing of the total shareable pool between the states. If all the states in the Indian Union have the same or almost the same per capita income, and if all the states have similar fiscal capacities, the problem of transfer between the states would be simple, namely equal per capita transfer to every state. In practice, there are considerable horizontal imbalances. States differ in area, size of population, income, tax base, forest and mineral wealth, etc. There are differential capacity and needs of the states, as also differences in the cost of providing services. Horizontal imbalances have to be corrected while distributing central resources among all the states in the country. Let us now discuss the criteria adopted by the 12th and the 13th Finance Commission. The 12th Finance Commission considered the recommendations of previous commissions on this point and also the memoranda submitted by various states regarding A. The continuation of the use of population as a factor, B. The use of income distance criteria, 3. Continuation of area as a factor, D. retaining the tax effort and index of fiscal discipline criteria. There is no objective factor in any of the above criteria. Till now, every finance commission has attempted to work out different criteria and different weightages for each criteria to arrive at a reasonable degree of equalization. In practice, this is impossible to arrive at, and every finance commission award has been criticized by those states who felt that they should have got a bigger share in the shareable central revenue pool. Let us take only one criteria. For example, the population factor, which is a basic indicator of need for public goods and services, and as a criteria it ensures equal per capita transfers among all states. This was recognized by all finance commissions, even though different finance commissions have given different weights. The 12th Finance Commission stated in this connection that looking at the recent periods during the 7th and 8th Finance Commissions, the weight attached to population varied between 22.5% and 25%. This weightage was reduced to 20% by the 9th Commission and further to 10% by the 11th Commission. We feel that a strong case exists for increasing the weight and have fixed it at 25%. Incidentally, in the memoranda submitted to the 12th Finance Commission, different states had demanded the weightage of population to be fixed between 10% and 50%. Ultimately, the 12th Finance Commission adopted the following criteria and weights for interstate determination shares of the states. For population, the weight 25%, income distance 50%, area 10%, tax effort 7.5%, fiscal discipline 7.5%, total 100%. The 12th Finance Commission concluded, we have tried to evolve a formula that balances equity with fiscal efficiency. Equity considerations, however, dominate, as they should, in any scheme of federal transfers trying to implement the equalization principle. Under this formula, the following 5 states would get the largest share of the total shareable revenue. UP will get a share of 19.3%, Bihar 11%, Andhra Pradesh 7.4%, West Bengal 7.1%, Madhya Pradesh 6.7%, total 51.5%. The rest of the 23 states would share the balance 48.5% of the shareable pool. According to the basic spirit of the Constitution, Finance Commission is supposed to make recommendations in such a manner that devolution of taxes and grants in aid tend to reduce the prevailing disparities among different states by allocating more resources for the development of less privileged and underdeveloped states. But as far as share of respective states in overall devolution of union tax is concerned, the 13th Finance Commission's recommendations do not seem to have followed that spirit of Constitution. For example, for Orissa, the allocation was 5.2% as per 12th Finance Commission award and was reduced to 4.8% by the 13th Finance Commission, that is a loss of 0.4%. It also means that in the year 2010-11, Orissa would be getting 798 crores less as per the budget estimates for 2010-11, and in the 5-year period of which 13th Finance Commission is operative, it would be at a loss of rupees 5,000 crore. It is important to note that in terms of human development, Orissa is way down. Similarly, Bihar would be at loss of rupees 2,400 crore in the next 5 years, and even smaller but underdeveloped states like Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand will also bear loss respectively of rupees 3,000 and rupees 10,000 crore. Though West Bengal has been allocated a little more than 12th Finance Commission, but it is still at a loss of 10% as compared to the 11th Finance Commission. It is obvious that smaller devolution would adversely affect the development efforts of these states. Similarly, the important thing is that many states such as Maharashtra, Punjab, etc., which are much advanced in terms of human development, have been given higher allocation than before. The rich states which were subject to loss such as Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Kerala, etc., will not be harmed much because they are revenue rich states. Criteria and weights for determining the relative shares of states in taxes and duties. 10th Finance Commission, 11th Finance Commission, 12th Finance Commission, 13th Finance Commission. The criteria were on population 20%, 10%, 25% and 25%. The distance criteria 60%, 62.50% and 50%. Capita income of the state from that of the state having highest per capita income, nil. 3. Fiscal capacity distance. In the 13th Finance Commission, it was 47.50%. Area 5%, 7.50%, 10% and 10%. Index of infrastructure 5%, 7.50% and nil. Tax effort 10%, 5%, 7.5%. Fiscal discipline dash 7.50%, 7.50% and 17.5%. Total 100, 100, 100, 100. This is the source for this table is report of 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th Finance Commission. Original source Indian Public Finance Statistics 2008-9. Basic cause of all these upheavals is a formula adopted by the 13th Finance Commission to decide the share of different states in devolution of union taxes. The 13th Finance Commission made radical changes in the formula for devolution such that more deprived states are put at a loss and better off are given more resources. Previous finance commissions had given utmost importance to the state's per capita income and its gap with the highest per capita income. 10th Finance Commission provided a weight of 60% to this factor. 11th Finance Commission 62.5% and now 13th Finance Commission has given a weight of only 47.5% to this factor, and that too only an approximation of this factor, that is fiscal ability of the state. 12th Finance Commission had given 7.5% importance to fiscal discipline, and in 13th Finance Commission its importance has been enhanced to 17.5%. It is worth noting that this factor was absent in 10th Finance Commission, whereas the central government itself is not serious about fiscal discipline and its fiscal deficit had exceeded 6.7% of GDP, and under the pretext of fiscal discipline and FRBM Act, reduction in state share by the Finance Commission is untenable. On the one hand, reducing the importance of poverty, and on the other hand, giving more weightage to fiscal discipline have put poorer states to loss at large. What makes the things even worse is the fact that some poor states get even lower share in the grants in aid also. This award would make the task of reducing existing regional inequalities more difficult. Rather, it may enhance these inequalities. This has been noticed in the past that rich states tend to attract more investments from other parts of the country and abroad, which increases their growth potential and prospects, while the poor states remain deprived of this benefit. Now that poorer states would receive less money from the central taxes, the aspirations of the residents of those poor states would remain unfulfilled. In the last few decades, there has always been growing conflict and tension between the Indian Union and the states in the matter of finance. This conflict has often been aggravated by political and ideological differences between different parties governing the centre and the states. The framers of the Indian Constitution provided for grants and loans so that the centre might come to the help of those states which were in difficulty, and also to bring about balanced development of the different regions. The use of grants and loans in the last 40 years or so, however, has resulted in the complete domination and control of the states by the centre, and to a certain extent even financial irresponsibility and indiscipline on part of the states. The enormous increase in transferred resources from the centre to the states, the phenomenal growth in loan assistance to the states, and political pressure amounting to blackmail by the centre through the instrument of grants have frightened the states. Hence, there has been an insistent demand for a comprehensive review of centre-state relations in general and centre-state financial relations in particular. The J.K. Thwaraj Committee report of the Taxation Inquiry Committee, Kerala government, the Raja Manar Committee on centre-state relations appointed by the DMK government of Tamil Nadu, and the document on centre-state relations 1978 adopted by the West Bengal cabinet led by CPIM United Front, all these have the same theme, that is political and financial autonomy for the states and drastic restrictions of the power and financial resources of the centre. Let us now recapitulate what we have studied in this module. India is a federal state with a clear distinction made between the functions and sources of revenue of the union and the states. However, there has always existed vertical imbalance between the centre and the states because central government has been assigned more revenue while the state government have been entrusted with more and larger responsibilities. Finance Commission constituted after every 5 years by the President of India makes recommendation for the transfer of resources from the center to the states and distribution of these resources among different states. However, there are various sources of conflict between the center and the states with regard to the quantum of resources so transferred from the center and to the states. We find that there has been a successive increase in the quantum of resources transferred from the union to the states by each successive finance commission. We find that states have been complaining about the insufficiency of resources transferred from the center to the states and also about the inappropriateness of the criteria adopted by the Finance Commission with regard to distribution of resources among different states.